Hello and welcome to the Happy Little Futures podcast. As always, let's start with a nice deep breath in and out. Fantastic. So I'm going to have a bit of a chat today about neurodivergence and mindfulness, because for some people they see these two things and they're like, that's what my kid needs, like that's what I need. I struggle, especially if you've got ADHD and your mind's always going, and it's like, I need to be mindful, I need to try and find a way in which I can manage this, and mindfulness could be the answer. Or likewise, if you or your child is autistic and struggles with sort of like sudden outbursts and periods of overwhelm and stuff like that, it can be extremely challenging. And so again, it can be really beneficial to have that mindfulness in place and those sort of skills to support you and to support them in place in those moments. However, for some people, they also find that actually even just the thought of mindfulness when they're dealing with ADHD and stuff like that is just, I was going to say pointless. I don't mean pointless. The thought of it in itself is a challenge to overcome, because especially when you've got ADHD or you're sort of like hyper-focusing, or you've got a special interest, for example, with ASD, it can be extremely challenging to switch your mind off. And that's what most people think about mindfulness and meditation being, is switching your mind off. However, it's not necessarily switching your mind off. We have, I'm sure I've said this countless times, we have 70,000 thoughts or so each day. And so for us to switch off those thoughts is extremely difficult, even for a neurotypical person. So the aim of mindfulness is not actually to switch those thoughts off. It's to have them come and go without judgment. It's to be present in the moment without judgment. That means that you might have a thought come and then you just notice it, go, oh yeah, and then let it go. Rather than having a thought come, picking up on it, sort of holding on to it for a while and letting it sort of fester almost somatically, mentally and stuff like that, so that then it becomes more of an issue than it needs to be. So being mindful in that respect can be really, really beneficial for children and adults alike who are neurodivergent. So, for example, for myself, I was only diagnosed with ADHD last year, possibly the year before. However, as a child, looking back now, I can see how much I masked. I was very much my daughter now, watching her grow up. It's like watching myself grow up again. I masked a lot. I struggled a lot with anxiety. I didn't feel like I fitted in and stuff like that. And I definitely think I've got rejection sensitivity disorder. I always get those two confused at the end. RSD, anyway. And so growing up, it was really, really challenging, because I didn't know how to challenge my thoughts. I didn't understand that actually there wasn't anything wrong with me. It was just the way that my brain worked. And my mind would go non-stop. In class, I'd be trying to listen, but I'd be thinking about something else. I'd be doing the thing that I was thinking about in class, and I'd be thinking about something else. My legs would be twitching. I couldn't sit comfortably on a chair. It was really challenging. Whereas now, I think with more awareness for myself, I am allowing myself more to let thoughts go. I'm allowing myself more to have those things come and sort of then notice them, which is that's the big thing. Sometimes we're thinking and we get in a spiral of thoughts. We don't even notice that we're doing that. However, through mindfulness, we sort of train ourselves to start to notice those things, those thoughts coming and going. And so I notice now those thoughts coming and going, and then that makes it easier for me to either challenge them as needed or to let them go and go, this isn't mine to hold. Actually, let's label it like this moment, that person was just stating a fact, and this is an RSD response that I'm having. It's not a normal response. It's not needed. It's not required. That person wasn't attacking. That's just the way that my mind works. So mindfulness has really helped me to overcome that. I wouldn't say overcome that. I would say to manage ADHD and RSD and anxiety and the impacts that it can have more effectively. However, when I first started meditating, so again, I'm pretty sure I've said that I started meditating, 15 or so years ago. It was quite a while ago now. I have no idea how long it was. It was quite a while ago. When I first started meditating, I was using Headspace, and it was really, really hard because I didn't notice that my mind was starting to wander. I would try to keep that attention, and just like in school when I'm learning something, my mind would go elsewhere. And that is quite a natural thing to do. And I think normalising the fact that actually it's okay to spot these thoughts coming up. It's okay to get lost when you're meditating. It's okay to be trying to be mindful and then find yourself thinking about what you're going to have for tea in 3 weeks' time. That's quite normal. So, first of all, breaking down that barrier, that mental barrier of, I can't because I have ADHD. I can't because I'm autistic and I'll worry about other things. That is a really important thing to do. Mindfulness is there to help support us, help support our mental health, help support us in preventing burnout, preventing things like that. And especially when you're masking and you're constantly sort of pushing that a little bit harder than maybe others have to get jobs done because you're battling those mental barriers. It's very easy to get to that point of autistic or ADHD burnout. And especially when parenting, that becomes even more challenging because you're also easily overstimulated. It can get very overwhelming. It does tend to run in families that people have neurodevelopmental conditions. And so for those people who are neurodiverse and parenting, then to have their children also getting overstimulated, watching them, especially if you've been late diagnosed, watching them battle things that you had to battle and actually possibly being triggered by those and having sort of a physical reaction yourself to the things that your children are going through. Also then battling school systems, battling waiting lists. There's a whole array of stuff that comes with just sort of being a parent with neurodivergent children or potentially neurodivergent children, and being a parent who is neurodivergent yourself. So it's really important that you recognise that mindfulness can support you no matter who you are. Whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, mindfulness can support you. Whether you've got ADHD or ASD, mindfulness can support you. It just might look different. It might look different to someone who can set aside an hour and sit and meditate for an hour. It might look different. Again, I've got fibromyalgia. I've spoken about this. For some people with chronic health conditions, mindfulness might look different to someone who doesn't have a chronic health condition or any form of health condition. Because some people might actually find that for them, running around and going for a jog is really, really good. It's a really mindful thing that they can do, really good for their mental health. Something that they can just sort of let things... Excuse me, yawning. Sorry, don't know where that came from. I do, I'm exhausted. It's end of term. That's where it came from. I'll just lie to you. No, it's end of term. My kids are overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. It's very tiring, and it's hot in the UK. I know I've got listeners all over the world. It's very hot in the UK and there is no air conditioning. or anything like that. It's very difficult to escape it. So that's why I'm yawning in the middle of the morning. Where was I? I was talking about, so for someone who doesn't have a physical health condition, for example, they might actually find that jogging is really good to help them sort of be more mindful, manage their mental health better. It might help them to let go of thoughts that they've been churning over. It might help them to process things. So that can be really good. However, someone with a chronic health condition, actually going for a jog isn't necessarily achievable. And for them, reading a book might be more achievable. It might be more achievable to just sit and just have some music on that they like. It's all about finding that thing that works for you. So just before I carry on, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, Rowan Fox Clothing. And Rowan Fox is absolutely gorgeous, hand-designed, nature-inspired clothing and gifts as well. All our kids have mugs, which are lovely. And you can head to rowanfox.com in order to find some of their beautiful array of clothes. Definitely have a look. They have some absolutely fantastic designs, and the natural nature inspired pictures are just sublime. So head over there and have a look. So it's important, as I said, to be mindful of the fact that being mindful of the fact that being mindful might look differently for you if you are neurodivergent, or if your child is neurodivergent, than if you or they are neurotypical. And I've spoken about sort of how when I first started meditating and being mindful, it was challenging because my mind would wander. I'd judge myself. I'd sort of sit there and go, "Oh, that was stupid." I'd miss a day by accident because I'd just forget. I don't necessarily do routines in the way that normal people would do routines, because I'll plan to do something and I'll do it for a day and then I forget the next day. And it doesn't matter whether I put a visual prompt in place or not. It just seems to just not exist after that first time that I've done it. So that's something that I'm working on personally, as you can probably tell. So it's important to recognise that actually the self-talk around all of this is really important. So telling yourself that being mindful is being present in the moment without judgment is really important, because that phrase doesn't actually tell you how long that you need to meditate or be mindful for. It doesn't tell you even that you need to meditate. It just tells you that you need to be present in the moment. And that can be as simple as putting your phone down and going over and just sitting and playing a game with your kids, or watching your kids, even sitting on the sofa and watching your kids play as you have a cup of coffee, even if you're lucky enough to have that cup of coffee, to just be sitting and tasting it, feeling that heat go down as you drink and stuff like that. That is being mindful. And if you find yourself getting lost in thoughts, when you find yourself just going, "Oh, my mind is wandering," I'm going to come back to what I was doing. I'm going to be present with the kids right now. I'm going to drink my coffee right now. And that's really important as well, because in that moment you're not judging yourself for having lost having lost that moment of presence. Actually what you're doing is you're going, "Well done me, I've noticed, I'll come back to the present moment." And that is kind of what it's all about, really, because we're training our brains in those moments to be in that moment. And especially when you've got children to think about, referrals to think about, school days to plan for, school events to plan for, you've got work to sort out, you've got meals to sort out, you've got a house to clean. When you've got all of these different things, I'm sorry if that stressed anyone out then, so me sitting there listing that. When you've got all of these things to do, it's easy to be living in the future. It's easy to not be in that moment. And giving yourself the gift of that moment, however long or however short, is really important. So, allowing yourself to just move forward without judgment is a gift. Changing that talk around, I won't be able to do it because I've got ADHD, I'm autistic, things like that. That's really important. And just sort of giving yourself permission to let go is also really important. Permission to let go of the to-do lists, permission to let go of the what-ifs, permission to try in the first place, regardless of who you are and what you've got going on, and permission to pause and sit, and if you do have uncomfortable thoughts, let them be without necessarily getting involved with them, letting yourself move forwards. So, as an adult, those are some really good things that you can do. However, when you have children who are neurodiverse and you want to help support them in managing their emotions, being more mindful, changing their self-talk, things like that, so that they are less likely to struggle with their mental health, or they can manage better any mental health struggles that they currently have, then it's really important that you don't start to put pressure on them. Because for many people, and children in particular with who are neurodivergent, that sort of demand can actually send them spiralling. There are people who struggle with demand avoidance, and so trying to place on that demand of being mindful can immediately backfire. There are people who will start to judge themselves and sort of spiral into anxiety and stuff like that and get more stuck in anxious thoughts. There are people who will just not listen or not be able to listen and focus on what you're saying. So we want to do it slightly differently. We want to have a think about how we can make it more integrative, make it more interactive, make it something that we do together, and make it so that we're modelling behaviours too. So, for example, if you've got a child who might struggle with sudden outbursts and sort of anger in particular, and find it very hard to come down, for you, if you start to, quite often that can be due to a range of things, but let's pick, for example, sensory overload. So, for example, you come back from school, they've been wearing their school uniform all day, that's really uncomfortable, it's been hot in the car, they're sort of hungry, and even though you've given them the snacks, it's not quite the snacks that they wanted and the things that they expected, and it's all a bit much. They get back to a busy house with lots of people, it's very intense, and even though they've been in school all day, there's routines in place, and they've come home and it's a bit of unwinding time, which actually can feel quite uncomfortable. So they're quite overwhelmed. In that moment, they can suddenly go into that period of sort of more severe overwhelm where they may be having a meltdown, they may be struggling quite a lot. As an adult, you can help them by, when you start to feel that overwhelm kick in, telling them, saying, I'm really struggling because it's too loud, the sun is too bright, I'm very, very hot, and I'm struggling to switch back into house mode, back into home mode. I just need to take a moment right now and just go and stand in a dark room or something similar. Obviously, you make sure your children are safe before you walk away, but saying that out loud will allow your children to not only recognise that these can all be factors that contribute to overwhelm and sort of potential outbursts. It won't only help them to recognise that they're not alone in all of this, and that they can sort of like their parent or carer is struggling with that as well, but also it will allow them to see the process that can go on before that point of complete overwhelm, before they are in that really heightened state, before you are in that really heightened state. And you could even say, I don't want to shout. I can feel myself getting overwhelmed and I need to step back before I get to the point where I explode. So giving them that sort of like almost a visual aid of how things can change for you and how the processes in the lead up can really start to come out and show their face will give them more awareness of not only your triggers but also of theirs. It will help them to start noticing. In doing that as well, you can also do it the other way around. So you can flip it round. So before you find that they're in that heightened state, if they've come out and they're hot and sweaty and they're wearing their uniform, you could maybe take a different t-shirt that they can get changed into or something like that. But you could also say to them, I can see that you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. I know it's hard when it's this hot and you're wearing, I'm using heat because it's hot at the moment. It can be the same with cold. And you're having to wear clothes that you don't feel comfortable in. Let's work through this together. Let's get home and give them a plan. Let's have a nice ollie when we get home, and you can take your top off and put on one that's more comfortable. You can have a bath, a nice cool bath or a nice cool shower and cool down, and we can start fresh at home and start to help them to notice those moments when you see that tension building, when you see that point just before things start to get hard. Help to label that in the lead up. So not only are you modelling that lead up for yourself, you're modelling it for them as well in their own body. And bringing in these sort of like these noticeable, sometimes sort of somatic symptoms of things like sensory overwhelm and stuff like that. It can really help them to then become more aware of them in the moment. A bit like when you're being mindful and you're meditating, for example, and your thoughts start coming up. The more you practice noticing those thoughts and letting them go, the more you notice the thoughts quicker. The more you're able to nip them in the bud before they get too much. So having to think about how you can start to label those things and allow them to notice them in a way that isn't demanding anything of them. It's just helping to label and help them to feel seen and to recognise it in themselves. There are also many different ways to be mindful, which I have spoken about previously and which you can find out more about in the Helping Kids with Mindfulness course, which I will talk about in a second. But all of these different ways, often we look for the natural anchors. So, for example, if your child is someone who likes to sit and colour in, you're not going to go, right, let's go for a 12-mile jog and be mindful. You're going to go, okay, well, actually, they like to sit and colour, so maybe we could sit and colour. So integrating it for someone who is, well, for any child, any adult, but especially when there's sort of neurodivergence at play and potentially things like demand avoidance and things like that at play, we look for those natural anchors. We look for those things that though your children will naturally be drawn to, so that we can start to build up time within their day where they can take moments out so that they can then go and sit back and just take it easy and be mindful in that moment without judgment, without their thoughts flying up all the time. And if they do fly up, even encouraging that chat, even sitting there and modelling it with them and sort of going, oh, I was just thinking about dinner for tomorrow, but I don't need to think about that right now. So you could have a book. So I'm going to write it on this list so that I've got that, so that it's something that I can come back to when I'm ready. Or I don't need to think about that right now, so I'm just going to let it go. And just sort of almost talking out loud and processing it out loud and helping them to become aware that actually it's not something that we always have to focus on, the thoughts in our head. And in time, that also starts to support things then like anxiety and things like that. And I can talk about this another time. And there will be courses coming up to help you to support yourself and also your children in noticing these sorts of things. But I am starting to run out of time. I have gone on a little bit today, so I am going to have to sort of draw that to a close. But hopefully that's given you a bit of food for thought on not only how you can approach mindfulness to support your mental health, to support neurodivergence, but also how you can start to integrate things and model things to help support your children and any children that you know who may be struggling, whether they're neurodivergent or not. But I know that I've put a bit more of a focus on neurodivergence today. Help them to sort of support themselves with mindfulness and start to integrate things that aren't going to require sort of too much input from them that they wouldn't want to put in, if that makes sense. So with that, I promised I would tell you about the Helping Children with Mindfulness course. If you head to happylittlefutures.co.uk, and you can do /courses, or you can just click on the courses section. The Helping Children with Mindfulness course is now live. This is a nice sort of, I think it's about just sort of three hours long course that you can just do as much of or as little of as you want as you go along in your own time. And through doing this, you will gain skills to not only help support yourself and recognise natural anchors and natural forms of mindfulness for yourself, but also you will get a lot of additional support in how you can start to build in mindful moments and recognise the natural anchors for your children so that you can help them to build both a physical and mental health toolkit to support them through life, to both hopefully prevent poor mental health, but also support poor mental health. These are going to be things that they not only use now, but then they carry through and continue to use through the whole of their lives. Things that they can adapt as they go, things that you can adapt as they grow up. And by doing this, you will start to help them to become sort of more emotionally aware, more aware of their triggers, more aware of when that sort of like self-esteem is a little bit low and what they can do to help, what you can do to help, more aware of maybe where they're sort of getting overstimulated by senses, or whether they're sort of sensory seeking in certain ways. And that's for all children, because it's not just neurodivergent children that have a sensory profile. All children have a sensory profile. All people do. We just might not be aware, and they tend to be a lot stronger and more obvious in children and adults with neurodivergence. But it helps you to build up that wider picture for yourself so that you can then help them to start integrating things to support their mental health and help them to build that bigger picture of themselves, become more self-aware. So head to the Happy Little Futures website and you can find all of that. And in the meantime, don't forget to give me a follow or a like on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you might be. And feel free to email me if you are interested in doing one-to-ones or would like any additional support. And I will speak to you soon. So just to finish off, as always, let's take a nice deep breath in and out. Excellent. Have a fantastic day.